Okay, guys, so let's gather ourselves and where we left off, everybody's back. Oh, first of all, let me just ask you, how was the exam? I saw a general pattern in terms of where people had difficulties. Some of you did everything, but some people had difficulty, and most of the time the difficulty was in the last part, the implementation of functionality. So that's my observation so far. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to use this information to structure the rest of the semester, and we will, bring everybody up to speed on those parts where we need to give stress. Okay, so where we were last time, we were implementing the model. So we had some discussion on how we are going to do it, how we are going to track who's playing next, etc., etc. And we came up with a list of properties and methods that the class should have, the model class. We said we are going to define certain properties, moves played, which we chose to be an array, a one-dimensional array. Is the text not large enough? So we did that, and then we had something called who is next, and there was a function we wanted to implement, who is next, whether the game is finished or not. Right? And we left it at the end of the class that you are going to try it on your own. So who had a chance to try that, implementing that function? Doesn't work. Okay. Okay, no worries. We'll do it now. So what we want to do is, where our app stands right now, well, where mine is, it's got some errors, so probably won't even compile right now if I were to run it, because there is no return statement. Let me just put this. Default return false. So I don't know if it happens with you, but every time I start Android Studio, there is an update. Every time. It's like almost every day they update something. Oh, this is going to be problematic. I should not run it on the emulator. The emulator and the recording don't work very well together. So anyway, when you run your app right now, it lets you play the game, but it doesn't tell you when the game is finished, and you can keep on playing new moves. That's where we are. So we need to move forward from there. What we want is, in our game board activity, right now we just say process touch, which basically calls this function in the game model, which increments the number of moves played, and it adds the next move, whatever is the current move, X or O, it gets added to our array, and it toggles the value of whose turn, so who's going to play next. This much we are doing. Now, in order to go forward from there, what we want is, before we play a move, we want to know if the game is already finished. So this is our tic-tac-toe. These are our indexes. And as you're playing, you've played a move, you touch it, the center square, it turns it. Whose turn, let's say, is X's turn, it becomes an X, and then the next touch is somewhere else. Like this, you keep on going. But before every touch, you process it, you need to know whether the game is still on. Let's say the next is here, and then the O goes here, and then X is played here, and the game is finished, right? You've got one line with all three X's. So in all the other blanks, now we need to ignore all touches. So at this point, when this third X was played, after it has been played, we need to determine whether the game has been, the game has finished. If it has, we'll say here game over and so won the game, something like that. So this was our, this is what we need to determine. If there are three of the same symbols, same objects in one line, whether it is a diagonal or a row or a column, does not matter. And to do that, what we had done was we had predetermined the winning combinations array to see what are the winning combinations. So for example, the 3 horizontal, I have a typo here, this should be 9. 3 horizontal, the 3 vertical, and the 2 diagonals based on those same indexes there. So now to implement this function, now we need to iterate over this winning combinations. So what we need to do is, we need to go one by one, and within each we have got an array. Each element is itself an array. So when we are at the first element in these winning combinations, we'll check if the moves played, which is where we are storing our moves, in locations 1, 2, and 3, if it has the identical object. Either an X or an O, does not matter. In fact, so right now, we can even narrow it down further. So, whoever has played, let's say this X just played, who can win the game at that point? Can O ever win the game if X is just played? No, right? It will be whoever has played can win the game. The other person cannot. So all we need to do is check for this. So in this array, we just have to check whoever just played, if that symbol is in these 3 positions in the moves played. And that's all the logic we need. If it is, then the game is over and whoever just played has won the game. Right? So we already toggled this whose turn. How about we need to also keep track of whose turn, and there is an opposite of that. We'll call it last played. So whose turn, if it is X, last played was O, or nobody really. It could be, that's why I initialize it as an empty string, so that we don't have to recalculate it, reverse this. So here what we'll do is moves played equal to this. So declare a string variable at the top called last played, and in this process touch, before we toggle this value of whose turn, we'll say last played equal to, this is just for convenience, otherwise we'll have to do the opposite. We'll have to say, oh, whose turn is it, but we already toggled it. So who just played? If whose turn is O, then X just played, like that. So this gives us a quick access to whoever just played. And here we want to check if any So in our winning combinations, has this last played. This is what we need to do, right? So how about a quick thing for you? You guys were, I had asked to do it at home, but let's do it now. Why don't you look up how to iterate over an array in Kotlin? What is the syntax? So that we can iterate over this winning combinations array. What is the syntax? Is it a for loop? If it is a for loop, what does it look like? Google. What's the simplest syntax? So some of you have the answer in front of you. Basically, all we do is for and this wants you to put it in a bracket, right? So it creates a range. And over here, item is retrieved. So item itself is what now? It's an array itself, right? And it has 3 elements. So before we can access those, so right now it is a generic object. What do we need to do before we can treat it as an array? So right now it's just an item, right? So it's an unknown class. It's an object of an unknown class. Before we can use it like an array, we have to cast it, right? So we'll say we'll cast it into an int array. This now allows us to use it like an array. So winning combinations, when we declared it, we created an array of integer arrays. But when we put it in a for loop like that, it comes to us as just a generic object, which is fine. We cast it. And then we need to check. What do we need to check? What are the conditions here for the game to have finished?
Check on the position. So the X or O have played on that position.
Right. So we know that the person who played just now is last played, right? So what we say is if positions 0 now position 0, okay, let's examine this array. So this is what we got as positions after casting it. Now it has 3 elements, 1, 2 and 3. So positions 0 is, what is its value? So see, this is the winning combinations and this is our for loop. When we say item in winning combinations, so it goes through one by one. So the first iteration of the loop, it has got this. Then we say, okay, that we are going to call positions inside the loop. What is the first element of this array? 1, right? So that's the one. Now we need to check if whatever is in the first position is equal to the whoever played last or not. So how do we check what is in that position? Exactly. Exactly. So what is in this position is moves played. So now we know this is what is in the first position. If this is equal to last played, and then we repeat this for all, for the three positions, position 0, position 1 and position 2. So when it is doing this element, it will check the first, second and the third, the first horizontal row. When it is doing, let's say, this element, it will check 2, 5 and 8. That is the middle column, vertical one. So this, once you have these three in place, then the game is over. So right here you could just say return true. Your question, Hamza? Okay, cool. Yeah. Can somebody explain it in their own words? So those who have a doubt. Position 0, right? So positions is one of the elements of this array. See, positions is item cast into an integer array, and what is item? Item is one of the elements. It's going to loop over all of them one by one. So what is inside this winning combinations? Winning combinations is an array of integer arrays. So every item in it is an integer array. So that array we are calling positions. So position 0 is the first element of that array. So first element of this, the first item here is 1. In the for loop, when it goes, let's say it goes to the next iteration, and then this becomes positions. So positions 0 is the first item in this array, which is 4, 5, 6, right? Position 0, position 1, positions 2. Like that it is doing. So what we are checking is if those three positions, what is the move that has been played in those three? If it is equal to the last move to be played, then the game is over. Otherwise, it's not. Then we keep doing that. So let's say you are on the second element here, 4, 5, 6. So this if statement, what it is saying is that position 0 is 4, positions 1 is 5, and positions 2 is 6. And moves played in the first of these cells, the position 0, which is 4, If it is an X, if this is also an X, and if this is also an X, then the game is over. Otherwise, do the next iteration. That's our logic here. So right now, game is over. We need to tell it to quit this for loop. We can either put a return statement here. We can say return true, and then the game is over. It won't do other iterations. Otherwise, it will keep on doing. Right? So then we just say here return true. So the game is over. Right? This will tell us if the game is finished. Still, yes, because we haven't used this function anywhere, right? You ran the return function. So we need to call this function, right? We have implemented it, but we haven't called it from anywhere. So that part of the logic still needs to be implemented. Okay. So you've got this function now. Is game finished? Where can we call it from? Game board, right? The activity. So go back to your activity. I'm going to again split my screen and work that way. So this is our function definition, and we'll go to the game board class. And this, after the move has been played, right? We check here. We'll call it from the game model dot is game finished. If game over, actually what we can also do is no, let's do one step at a time so it's easier to understand. If game is over, then display in the text view, else do nothing really. So if game is over, now let's say when the game is over, in your above your game board you've got a text view, right at the top. Let's say you want to display there game over. How will you do that? So yes, so when all the combinations are one of them is satisfied, there is 3 of the same in one row, column or diagonal, this function will return true. And when this is true, what we want is we want to take this game board and in it there is a text view. So there are a few things we'll do. One is we'll display that the game is over. So let me first, I want to, it's too small on my game board here. I'm going to increase its font size. Okay. So how do we change this text? That's the question. So both of you are right. Find view by ID is also is going to get it, but Kotlin has this advantage. See, if you watch this, let me go back to the game board. How we accessed? See, just dot, right? So we just go here. We just say what was its name, whatever its ID is. You can just say that ID dot. So this is my text view, its ID is text view. So all I have to do is say text view dot, okay, so it is giving me a unresolved reference text view.
Import it.
think this is a different problem. You're right, it's missing the definition of text view. So the new text is game over. Okay. So now you play the game and see if the text changes. That's one thing we need to do. The next thing is we need to stop new moves. We'll do that. Run your app and see if you can. It tells you that the game is over. Perfect. So now it will display game over, but it will let you keep on playing after that. So how do we fix that? So this is what you should be getting. Once you have played a winning combination, it will say game over, but it lets you keep on going. So we now stop that. The way we will do it is, this game over, let's make it a class variable instead of a local variable to the function. We'll make a class variable and initialize it to false. And how can we use it now? How can we use this to stop accepting new moves? So where does the execution come when you touch a button? So the execution, square touched. See what happens when you touch a button, this function is called. So in here, we already have right at the top that if there is already a text in it, then go back. So here we can add another condition that if it has a text or game over, go back. So it won't do anything. So now your game is more or less fully functional. You can play it, and when the game is finished, it says game over. Right now, you can improve that. You can say you want the game instead of game over. And it won't accept any more touches. You should all be at that point right now. Okay, so now let's say here at the bottom where it says we are displaying game over, you want to say who won the game. How can we do that? Exactly. So what we'll do is we'll concatenate here. We have to access it in the game model. This way it is going to display who won the game. Okay, play around. There is one edge case we are missing. Yes. So what happens if you fill up all the 9 squares? It just keeps showing the default. Okay, there are a couple of things we need to fix. One is, right now, when I open the game board, it just says text view text, whatever is the default. That's not very useful. What would be more useful here? At the top. Whose turn it is, right? So when the game is not over, you want to display whose turn it is, whether it's X or Y's turn. Not Y, the other one. So first thing we need to do is we need to initialize it. We need to initialize it in our onCreate as whoever's turn it is as their turn. So we'll just go to the same thing, text view dot text equal to game model dot whose turn. So this will do it at the opening. See what is happening? Why have we put it here? See, now when I open the game, it says X's turn. X is the one starting according to our game model default. When I play the X's turn, it still says X's turn. We need to fix that. Can you guys do that? Where it will go? Who can tell me where we are going to place that code? The else in the where we left it, do nothing we said, right? Actually, we need to do something. So if the game is not over, whoever's turn it is changing. So we just need to basically copy this and paste it there. And it is not do nothing. It's do something. It's important to show if both of them have played one move each or two moves each, then you don't know whose turn it is just by looking at the board, who started. So now it still opens up with the same X's turn, but when I touch, it changes to O's turn. And that's what this else here is doing. Okay. Now, where do we determine whether the game ended in a draw, that all moves have been played and nobody won? all boxes are full, right? When all the boxes are full. And where will we check it?
A lot of moves is recognized.
Exactly. So in our model, we still need to check, because even though 9 moves have been played, somebody may have won. Right? On the 9th move, somebody may have won. So we go through this for loop, and if this for loop does not return true and the execution comes here, meaning if 9 moves have been played, the game is a draw. Otherwise, it would have returned true. If all 9 moves have been played and somebody has won, it would have returned true and we would not get here. So that's where we need to check now. If number of moves played is equal to 9, and then the game is ended in a draw. Now there are various ways we could communicate it, because when we call that is game over function from our view controller, we're just taking true false. So the game is over, but nobody won. So we could have another variable here that the game ended in a draw, or this whoever last played, who won. We are going with who won actually. I did not even use it. So we could use it. We could use it here before we return. So who won equal to last played. And otherwise, who won will remain as blank, and here we will just say, so the game is over, and since who won remains empty, nobody won, but the game is over. And then we can rely on that information in our view controller. So we need to make a change there. In our game board, we are saying last played. It's not last played, it's who won. But before we do that, we need to check if that who won has any text in it. Right? So the way we check if there is any text is text.length. So if game model dot who won dot length, if it's greater than 0, then we know that somebody has won, and we can use that for consistency here. Who won? Oops, sorry, I lost that. Else it's a draw, so that we need to draw. This should basically complete the implementation of the game board, I think, unless you can play around and find some other problems. Let you play black squares. Okay, everybody up to that point? So now our job is, we've got a fully functional game board. We play a game. How do we put it in this list? That's what we need to do now. This list is going to be populated using information that we save on the phone. So whenever a game has finished, we need to save the information about that game. Okay? So what is it that we are going to save? Well, up to this point, so we've covered all of this. We have got as more moves we don't need because we implemented in our view controller, we implemented that game board which turns to true, and we don't accept any more moves. And this will come to think about the ability to reproduce a past game. We'll come to this later. This is all we have done. We have done the controller, the view, and the model. Okay. There's another one of, you'll see that I like to do this. I'll keep on feeding you some of these sayings. So this fellow, his name is Anthony Trollope. He was a writer. He wrote novels and works of fiction. So somewhere he wrote that there is no royal road to learning, no shortcut to the acquirement of any art. What you're learning, this is also an art. Also a science, but it's also an art. And, for example, things like you run into errors, how to detect, how to debug them, how to think through a problem from a viewpoint that will help you implement it into a program. So, can you do it without much practice? You'll only get better with practice. And if you want to become an expert, the more you do it, the better you will get at it. And there will come a point where somebody could wake you up in the middle of your sleep and ask you a question about how to fix something. You will reply and go back to sleep. That's the level of expertise you will acquire. So, some encouragement.